Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Generally Irritable. We had a little bit of a kickoff this week with Jay Shepard on Tuesday talking about recruiting candidates. And Sunday night looks like it's going to be the new night for Generally Irritable. We're relaunching the podcast. I'm super excited tonight to have Jeff Comstock on to talk about the redistricting happening in Burlington and Vermont and what the implications are, how you can continue to be involved and maybe even attend the meeting tomorrow evening. I believe it's the last meeting for public input in Burlington. So Jeff is going to talk a little bit more about that tonight. And then next week, I'm going to have on Julie Marks from the Vermont Short-Term Rental Association. I hope I got all the letters for the acronym correct. She's going to be coming on talking about what the city and state of Vermont are doing to start to infringe on people's ability to do short-term rentals. So that includes things like Airbnb, traveling nurses, how they're trying to restrict landlords and property owners from being able to use their home in the way that they in the way that they see fit. So, I'm always going to want to talk about the government infringing on private property rights. That is super duper important. So, if you're watching on Facebook, please like my page, Generally Irritable. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. Oh, like it on Facebook too. Like it on Twitch if you're watching on Twitch. All of the things. Everything that you do helps me support the channel to make sure other people get to see it. And it adds credibility to the page so that our information or this information gets shared with more people. So if this content is valuable to you, like, share, and subscribe. You can also go to my Patreon, Generally Irritable, and you can become a Patreon and donate on a monthly basis to support content. Content like a few projects we have coming up. You guys may have seen some of my comedic shorts before. We've got a couple more of those in the works. A couple of short documentaries are going to be coming out next year as well. So if that is valuable content, if you want to help expose how the government is infringing on your rights and your neighbor's rights, you can support me by going to Patreon, generallyirritable.com, or just mail me a check or send me a carrier pigeon or whatever, whatever. But that's enough of the sales and advertising. Hopefully I've been talking long enough to get people to start watching, because that's what you're supposed to do, I guess. You're not supposed to get right into it, which I normally do. So I'm just rambling for a minute, getting you to pay attention to me. Yay. But without further ado, in all seriousness, we're going to have Jeff Comstock come on. He's been following the redistricting. So let me just go ahead and add him to the stream. Mr. Comstock, welcome.
Good evening, Erica. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. I am so grateful to have you here with me this evening. Jeff, please remind me, have you been up volunteering as a part of this process, or are you just a concerned citizen keeping up with all of it? Are you like a delegate?
Actually, I am serving as an alternate on the Ad Hoc Redistricting Committee for Ward 7.
Got it.
So I know you're familiar with our MPA structure out here. So Ward 4 and 7, we decided, we elected representatives to the working committee, and then we also picked an alternate or a backup from each of the two wards here as understudies, if you will. So we've actually had a team of 4 people participating in this process so that nobody misses a meeting.
That's awesome. That's really, really important. And a little bit of a side note there, Jeff, what I love about you sharing that story is a lot of people don't get involved in self-governance because they think that it takes so much time, that it's going to be this part-time job, that they're not going to be able to keep up. And everybody's busy. Everybody has jobs, they have kids, they have families they want to take care of. And so if everyone pitches in and makes sure that it gets done, then it doesn't have to be this huge Herculean task we can work together as a team and as a community to have our voices heard and be represented in our local government. So thank you for that little side note for self-governance, people.
Yes.
Okay, so you're the alternate. So now, how long have there been meetings about Redis? Now, well, let me back up a little bit. So you are the alternate for Ward 7 to the city of Burlington redistricting conversations, but then there's also the state of Vermont is having redistricting conversations as well.
That's correct. That was one of the points I wanted to hit on, is to make sure that people understand the distinction between the redistricting that's being led by the state legislature. It's the Legislative Apportionment Board, which is doing statewide redistricting for House and Senate seats.
Got it.
And there's a separate redistricting process for the wards in city government in Burlington.
Okay. Are we going to get to talk about both, or are we just talking about Burlington today?
I'm better versed in where Burlington is. I'm a little bit familiar with how the conversation is shaping up for the statewide legislative district, as far as how it may impact Burlington. So we could talk about that a little bit.
Got it. Well, and I know they're still really very much in flux, like until legislative session comes back in January, right? Like they can only do so much before they bring the whole legislature back.
Well, yeah, what happens is the Legislative Apportionment Board puts forth a proposed plan that each municipality, their Board of Civil Authority, then gets to vote on approving or disapproving of the proposed plan. And then that process goes back. So the municipalities will engage in reviewing the proposed plan, and then it goes back to the legislature for final approval when they convene in January.
Got it. Okay. So they're in the preliminary stages, and then there's a few more stages left to come, it sounds like.
Well, they are fairly well down the road in terms of, proposing a structure for redistricting statewide. And the biggest point of contention regarding the House anyway is that they're leaning towards recommending single seat districts throughout the state.
Yeah.
And that works fairly well in some places, but it actually is a counterproductive or intuitive in some of the larger municipalities like Burlington and Rutland and Brattleboro, for example, where population-wise, you hit the triggers for a certain number of seats that cover the whole city, rather than so it's the debate.
Like in Burlington, it's going to be like block by block with a representative, basically because of the population.
Correct. Whereas some of the larger municipalities are arguing for an option for 2-member districts, so that the districts can be somewhat larger and then still fit within the confines of the city itself.
Interesting. That is so interesting. Okay, so we're going to put a pin in that conversation for right now, but if we can talk about it a little bit more, I want to, because I definitely got the impression that those single member districts would be better. And I know there was a bill to break up the Chittenden County 6-pack, the senators. So that's really interesting. Okay, so we're going to talk about that a little bit later.
Yep.
Now I want you to kind of lead off this conversation, because I have to admit to our viewers that I've remained ignorant about this topic. I have not done as much research as I probably should have. So especially our Burlington folks, if you have questions, feel free to type it in the chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. You can type in the chat if you have a question or a comment that you want to add to the conversation. If we don't know something and you know the answer, just throw it in the chat. And Jeff, where do you think is best to start? I know you sent me a couple slide deck, a resolution. Where do you think it's best to start the conversation?
I think the best place to begin talking about redistricting is with the census.
All right.
Because it actually is the census every 10 years that triggers the redistricting conversation or the evaluation as to whether redistricting is going to be required in any municipality or state throughout a state, for example, all based on gains and losses in population. So it's all driven. Redistricting is really a population driven statistical exercise. And that, I guess that's the other point to be clear about, is when we talk about redistricting, we're talking about population, not registered voters.
Yeah.
And you know, if we get into the weeds in the dynamics of Burlington, for example, there are some very interesting discrepancies between population distribution and registered voters and the whole voter turnout dynamics.
Oh, are we going to talk about that today, or are we just?
I hope so.
Going to skip it?
No, I hope so, because that's actually.
Because when you said that, I got confused. I've always known that the census is like counting number of actual human beings. Do some people mistake it as having to do with voter registration?
Well, when it comes to the issue of how to divide the city of Burlington, for example, you know, redistricting is required to draw those boundaries, if you will, whether they're wards or districts, based on population, not on the number of registered voters.
Yes, absolutely. That makes perfectly good sense. It does make it interesting to think about. I was talking to someone recently, and I looked at the Secretary of State, and I saw that there was about 492,000 registered voters in the state of Vermont. And I went, okay, wait a second. You're telling me there's nearly 500,000 registered voters in the state of Vermont, but there's only like 650,000 people here. And you're telling me that I can't even do the math. What, 90% of the population is not only is registered to vote and of age? That doesn't really that didn't make sense to me.
We have that identical discrepancy going on in Burlington. Yep.
So it's state and local.
Yes. And so it all has to do with who is or is not on the voter checklist and how long they stay there when perhaps they shouldn't be.
Well, and isn't if that were the case and we were to do apportionment based on registered voters, then the Hills section would be way disproportionately overrepresented because the turnover there is so high. I'd be willing to bet a lot of those extra registered voters are the college kids or people who have passed away. What do you think? Is there any way to speculate?
Yeah, the current dilemma that Burlington is facing regarding redistricting is hugely impacted by the college student population. And I think we might want to come back to that before
Yeah, because I just realized they don't get included in our census, do they?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
So temporary part-time residents get included for apportionment in our legislature.
Yep.
Okay. So
And
that's crazy. And does that have all of our viewers? Did you guys know that? Did you guys know that the temporary part-time human beings who occupy the downtown Burlington apartments get included? So that means, because what is it, Jeff? Like 50,000 year-round residents of the city of Burlington? Doesn't include the
yeah,
college kids, does it?
our current the current population of Burlington, according to the 2020 census, is the official number for this purpose is 44,743.
So wait a
And
second.
and
Oh, go
that
ahead.
does include college students who live on and off campus.
What?
Yep, afraid so.
Oh my God, this is crazy. So I'm now, okay, this is upsetting me. Is this the same no matter where you are in the country? Like if you go to, Arizona State University, some huge campus, or Chapel Hill, or whatever fill in the blank college, does the census work the same way all across the country? I'm assuming. Is that a dumb
I
question?
want to say yes, because sort of in our meeting notes here, apparently there is case law establishing that yes.
What?
It looks like a Supreme Court ruling from 2016 established that, and it says here that means student residents are considered even if they vote in another district in terms of counting population.
Now, I guess technically speaking, right? You get the census in the mail and it says who lives in your house. And I did not include the traveling nurse that was staying with us as an example. She has a house and she lives somewhere else, and she's only living with us temporarily. So I would think that, like my mom, as an example, she lives part-time in Texas and part-time in Vermont. Her legal address is Texas. So I'm not going to count her as a legal resident of my house because she doesn't live there. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So, okay, this is really interesting. So we're learning some census law here and how the census works. You don't know why they do it that way, do you? Is it just like they just want to count however many people are in a specific area at any given time? And they don't really care about why you're there, I guess?
Apparently not, right?
Okay.
And I don't want to go too far down that legal
That's not what we're
analysis,
here.
because that's
Yes, we're not
over my
here.
head.
Yeah, we're not here to judge the census rules. You're right, Jeff. We're here to talk about redistricting. Thank you for reprioritizing. All right. So the census happens. We got 44,000 people in Burlington. They are college students. They are longtime residents. We are counting by human beings living in the area, not by registered voters. Okay, what next?
Okay, so how we got to this redistricting conversation where we are now is so the 2020 census occurred during COVID, and it took an extra long time for that work to get done. So the city and everybody actually across the country, all the states and municipalities received their 2020 census data many months later than it was expected to arrive. So, which is why we're just starting this evaluation process in late 2021. So this past summer, the city council, in preparation for this redistricting project, established or passed a resolution to establish an ad hoc committee made up of representatives from the various MPA, the neighborhood planning assembly groups around the city, to actually go out and collect feedback from their neighborhood groups and citywide on people's current view on the structure of the current city council, the number of city councilors that we have. Do people like or dislike the structure where we have ward councilors and district councilors, and all of those sort of factors in terms of the structure of the current city council, the configuration of the current wards, and all of that. So
that's this document, right? I think, Jeff, let me share it with our viewers. So that's this guy, right?
That is correct.
Establishing. Okay. So I love reading these, all the whereas and therefore and wherefore there for our thous and things like that. Is this something that you think the viewers should go find and take a look at a little deeper? What does this tell? What does this tell people?
Well, that is available. I think this just established the ad hoc committee from the neighborhood planning assemblies. And just so that I think people, if they understand that this working committee grew out of NPA participation, I think that's really as much as they need to know now, because the whole schedule that they originally outlined in the resolution has gone by the wayside, and there's really a new target schedule for this process to unfold. And they'd probably be much more interested in that PowerPoint set of slides, that's also going to be available on your website.
Yes. So Ed, just so everybody knows, links to all these documents and websites that we're going to look at tonight, I'm going to post them all in a pinned chat or in the description, depending on which one I can do on the various platforms. So they'll be posted after the show tonight.
Right. Because all of the census data and the redistricting literature that we're talking about tonight is in that set of PowerPoint slides. And I think that will be much more informative for people to look at.
Okay, so that's this one when we get started with it.
Correct.
That's going to be this one. Okay.
And cool. I guess the other important plug is that the beauty of our conversation tonight is that the third and final public participation meeting is tomorrow evening, Monday, December 6th, from 6 to 8 o'clock at the Champlain College Miller Center on Lakeside Avenue.
Got it.
Not to be confused with the Miller Center out the New North End.
Oh, right. Yeah, there is a lot of things with Miller's names on it, especially at Champlain. I will say thank you to bless him. He's not with us anymore. Robert and Holly Miller, great members of the community of Burlington, donated a ton of money for various colleges and buildings and things like that. I went to Champlain College. I'm an alumni there, and they gave us a lot. So thank you to the Miller family. Okay, so
and they're not the
Miller on Lakeside.
Right. I'll also reiterate that the meeting, the public participation meeting tomorrow, you have an in-person and online option.
Yes, and I will post the Zoom credentials as well for that online option.
Very good.
Yes.
All right. So that's the public service announcement portion of our conversation.
Excellent. So that's the big thing. If you have an opinion about this, make sure you have your opinions heard. So as far as the Burlington redistricting goes, where do you think we're at with that? Are they close to making a decision? What have they been hearing so far? What do you think is most important for our viewers to hear?
I would say that if I had to pick the 3 top items, okay, that trends that seem to be emerging from this conversation is that there's very strong inclination that people do want two representative city councilors per ward.
Yeah.
Okay, so people do want to go back to 2 councilors per ward.
Oh, really? Instead of the ward and district councilors?
Yeah, so that's actually probably part 2 that I mean, I personally, I don't mind the district structure, but I think it's people are not really happy with that experiment, if you will. So, so they're trending towards doing away with the district structure and going back to 2 city councilors per ward. And let's see, I would say the other one might
hold on. Hold on to that really quick. So Christopher Aaron just posted that some city councilors are interested in pushing for at-large seats here in Burlington. What does that mean?
Okay, so that is yep, that was actually going to be point number 3.
Oh, okay. So let's.
Well, that's okay, but we'll explain it that the idea of an at-large city councilor, would be someone that was elected citywide the same way that we elect the mayor, for example. Okay. And that, rather than having city councilors elected that represent or are accountable to specific sections of the city or neighborhoods of the city. Okay. And they're, so I see that as somewhat of a, I mean, that proposal emerged out of the city council. That is not a proposal that has emerged out of this ad hoc public forum.
Okay.
And I would have to say that by the neighborhoods and the NPAs, and that has not been received particularly well.
Yeah, are we gonna do mayorship by committee? That seems like it would be weird, and then you're campaigning against the whole city.
Correct.
Or like you're having to campaign in the whole city. That's even harder than the district seats.
Right, and that's kind of the I don't know if I want to say the discrepancy there is that one of the reasons that people don't really like the district idea is that the idea that it's more difficult to generate candidates that can cover a larger district, that can, physically campaign in a large district and also raise enough money to campaign in a large district, as opposed to their more defined ward. And see, one of the other positive factors is people do like the concept of a connection between their city councilors and their wards or their neighborhoods. And having at-large city councilors would be completely contrary to that concept.
Yeah, I can't get my current city councilors to answer me, and they're only responsible for the New North End, let alone somebody. The mayor definitely doesn't respond to anything, so I can't imagine feeling like those at-large folks would be beneficial for me personally. And it's interesting because every ward of Burlington is so different. We talk a lot of times about why we have a federalist system in the United States, right? So we're the United States of America, and we all have our own representation because each state has its own set of resources, pros, cons, good, bad, whatever. And so they're going to have different priorities than some other state. And it's really the same thing in Burlington. If you look at the diversity of our wards, right? We've got the low density residential areas in the New North End. You've got the college population in, what is it, like 1 and 2. You've got, you know, the hippies in Ward 3. You know, every district, it really has its own personality, its own flavor.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And that concept of accountability and a connection between neighborhoods and their representatives is a very strong theme that has emerged from this public forum process regarding redistricting.
Yeah.
And that also plays directly into the logistics of redistricting in terms of where do you draw the boundaries between wards in the city and keeping neighborhoods intact that have some cohesiveness to them.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so I interrupted you. We were on, there was one.
Oh,
let me go back. So there was one. What did we talk about?
Well, actually, I think we've probably covered
did
them.
Did we catch them all?
I think so, because there was the concept of, you know, 2 city councilors.
Yep. At-large counselors.
Yeah, well, doing away with districts in favor of.
Got it.
So that goes kind of hand in hand with the 2 representatives, doing away with the districts. The idea of maintaining neighborhood integrity.
Okay.
To some degree, and yeah, not being in favor of the at-large.
Did the city, I know you said it came out of the city council and not out of the ad hoc committee. Was there an explanation for why they thought at-large counselors would be of benefit?
No, they did. Okay. They didn't share that with us directly, and I don't know if you're looking for my skeptical.
Do I want you to speculate?
My skeptical political viewpoint on that one.
I mean, you're willing to share, but you do not have to. Let's see.
I will. I guess for now, I will simply say that the idea of at-large city councilors may serve the interest of some factions on the city council and not necessarily the individual wards.
That was really polite. That was really polite. And you didn't give up any information. Yes, Christopher, a citywide campaign is much more expensive than just in a district. I don't know if people realize, just a side note, all of those mailers you get in the mail at the time of during campaigning, city council and the November elections and stuff like that, it costs about $4,000 to send those to one ward. One ward of Burlington, a round of mailers costs about $4,000. Now, there may be people, you know, maybe they can get discounts or deals or something like that, but $4,000, that's how much. When you count up all those stupid pieces of paper that you get in the mail before the election, now you know how much people are spending on their campaigns. But I digress. This is also not a conversation about campaign finance reform. So, Jeff.
Okay. So kind of going back to, so for people who are interested in, hopefully motivated to participate in, the public forum and attend the meeting, if they haven't already attended one, some of the other, being aware of some of the other concepts that go into redistricting is, because it's based on population, it's also all tied together with redistricting in order to achieve sort of the one person, one vote representativeness required by the 14th Amendment. So there is a kind of a constitutional directive here in terms of dividing states, municipalities, or wherever into equal numbers of people in order to achieve equal representation. I mean, that's a really underlying principle to why redistricting occurs when the population either grows or shrinks.
That makes sense. And that's what my understanding is, at least in the state, there are going to be parts of the state that are going to be losing representation, and some are going to be gaining. And unfortunately, it looks like Chittenden County is going to have even more over-representation in the legislature. So that's a little bit nerve-wracking for me. But did they see a big population change in Burlington? Are they thinking they're going to keep the wards about the same and just change the way we vote for city councilors? Or do they think they really have to redraw it?
I think the opinion that we're going to have to redraw is inevitable. But one of the other trends, if you will, is that there seems to be some support emerging for going back to a 7-ward structure, which would give us a 12 or 14 member city council. And then, because anybody that looks at the current ward map and looks at Ward 8 can't help but understand that is the definition of gerrymandering.
I was literally just going to read Fish and Chimps said the 8th ward looks like a snake. And just like the gerrymandered student district for the UVM students, special treatment for me, but not for the, like you guys think you're hiding, you think you're hiding stuff, but you're not.
So, so going back to a 7-ward configuration would help alleviate that, because the student population would then be redistributed into a couple of other wards.
Oh, that would be awesome. Be spread out, and then maybe. So, I don't know. See, so that's a good question. I don't know if that's better or worse. If they're all lumped into one ward, then they don't have as much. It seems like they wouldn't have as much control or influence over the city council. If they're spread out between wards, does it dilute it enough that we're not going to have students voting in every ward? Do you see what I'm saying? Are we going to have 10, 20-year-olds on the city council instead of 5?
I would think that would be less likely to happen.
I hope so. Okay, I have to look at the old map. Are they going to go to the old map, or is it going to be a wholly different map?
It's going to require some new boundaries.
Okay.
And that pretty much gets us into the part of the conversation about sort of the 10% plus or minus deviation rule. So if you start, if we want to jump into that, if you wanted to jump into, okay, so let me see let's see, if you wanted to zoom ahead to say like page 19 or 20. So zoom ahead for a ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go one more from there.
One more.
I think. Okay. So just quickly, this is a comparison of population from 2010 and 2020 with the 8 wards across the city, and you can, folks can look at that and see which wards have gained and lost population, and that's the current configuration map.
Interesting.
So on the right hand side. So please jump to the next page.
Yeah. Wow. Ward 1 is a much bigger difference. Isn't that interesting? Okay.
Let's see. So the next page, here we go. So this is a map that folks are currently working with that shows the current population in each of the 8 wards and whether they are above or below the average. So what the fine print there, it's roughly about, so if we divided the city into 8 pie pieces, each ward would be roughly 5,600 people.
Okay.
And what this chart is doing is actually showing how each ward is either above or below that average number, the ideal average number. And then, so if we redraw ward boundaries, the idea is that according to law, we're not supposed to be more than 10% deviation from that above or below that ideal distribution of population number. Oh, I lost you, Erica. Can't hear you.
I'm just checking to make sure you're paying attention.
Oh.
So where does that 5593 is that is the average of the population if it were divided by a blah blah blah, or is that number come from somewhere? Did I miss that?
Well, no. If you took the 44,000 some odd 700 some odd number and divided it by 8,
the current number of wards. So the ideal number would change if we went to a 7 ward.
That's correct.
Okay. So then it would be like the 44,000 divided by 7, and then population mean. There you go. That's right. The population mean.
Yep.
Yes.
So
exactly.
So then what that would require is if people went back and looked at the colored picture map of how the city is currently divided into wards.
Yep.
And so if Ward 8 there disappeared and were absorbed by the adjacent wards, then it's sort of the analogy that people like to use is that if you push your finger in a balloon, it's going to bulge out somewhere else. So so the challenge will be how to reconfigure the wards, where to draw the boundary between neighborhoods and still maintain your as close of a legal distribution or variance as possible.
That is so interesting. So does being able, maybe this is a dumb question and tell me it doesn't matter. Obviously if they drew Ward 8 all nonsense like previously, it doesn't seem like it actually matters, right? Like you see some districts where if you look at the Chittenden County Senate district as an example, it's really funny. When you look at these things, they look gerrymandered. I'm like, oh, you excluded the Chittenden County Senate district excludes all of the towns that are more conservative than the other ones. So Colchester isn't included as an example. Milton is not included, right? They're included in a different Senate district. So other than trying to, maintain neighborhood integrity, do they actually care? Is there like rules about where you can draw a line, or like you can't split up a road, or like anything like that they have to take into consideration?
Not necessarily rules, but sort of generally accepted guidelines.
Okay.
Primarily based on, either neighborhood character or geographic boundaries or kind of traditional neighborhood. But of course, you absolutely cannot draw lines based on anything that's going to be considered discriminatory against some protected class, whether racial or economic or cultural or any of those anything that would essentially fall under the equal opportunity employment kind of categories.
Race, religion, disability, stuff like that.
Anything that you think of as normally as a protected class.
Yes.
Justifying your boundary decisions based on those factors is absolutely illegal.
So like if and I'm just trying to draw an example for people. So if, say, all the condos on the waterfront in downtown Burlington was one ward and it completely just, took down North Avenue, Battery Street, but just kind of skipped over North Street and then did downtown, kind of like that. Like if it excluded the poorer area of Burlington, as an example, that would not be good, right? We're supposed to try to not do stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah, legally, you're not supposed to be either, packing protected classes into one particular area or purposefully dividing them to sort of, dilute any social or political or economic interest they might have.
Yeah, that's not good. Okay.
Stuff like that. Yes.
Got it. Okay. So we're thinking about 2-member districts. They're trying to decide. So the meeting tomorrow night, the public forum, is that an opportunity for everyone to say, I want 2 city councilors, so we should do 7-member districts. I want ad hoc, at-large city councilors or something like that. Is that what these public hearings are about? Or is it about getting more ideas?
Both, actually. So the primary charge in the city council resolution is an evaluation and feedback of the current system, but the current structure and function of the city council. But people have participated in the previous public forums and presented all sorts of variations on a theme for the ad hoc committee to consider that has to go into because the ad hoc committee is going to, in late December, is going to create a report that they will present to the city council. And then the process of, then the decision-making process and the map drawing technical work then goes to the jurisdiction of the city council.
Oh, okay. That was going to be my next question. Who draws the map?
The city council.
So do they each, this is what I would do. I'd print out my little picture of the city of Burlington and I'd start drawing on it. Is that basically what they do?
Yes. But as long as you're incorporating the population data that goes along with where you draw the line.
That has got to be so crazy. Do they get like a little picture with numbers of people in the place? Oh, you have no idea what the answer to that is. I'm sure. I'm so fascinated by what they're going to get and how they're going to figure it out.
Right. Yeah. For the data geeks out there, there is mapping software that they will use as a tool to do this that has, so they will be drawing lines based on census blocks. So every little census block has the population number attached to it. So they can redraw lines and it automatically adjusts the numbers as you draw the line.
Like AutoCAD or something like that? That is fascinating.
Right.
I want to do it. Can I be in charge? Hey, city council, I want to be in charge. I want to make a map. I would totally do that. That would be fun.
So I think the other piece for people to be aware of in that process. How that will play out for us in the coming year is, of course, the original proposal was to have a plan in place that would be voted on town meeting day 2022, but that is no longer the case. So to cut to the chase, the current schedule has the redistricting proposal being on the ballot in November of 2022.
So
the city,
it will affect it won't affect council, it won't affect city elections until next year. Till 23.
Correct. Would take effect for town meeting day 2023.
3 years after the census was done. Is that normal? Is it normal for the process to take this long?
I would have to say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because in this case, yeah, I mean, there was a delayed availability of census data. And then of course, there's always the political sausage making that follows.
Yep.
Yes. So, but after the 2010 census, we didn't actually complete our redraw of districts until, 2015, 2016? I think. Yes.
Why?
Just because it took such a long time to come to agreement on, redrawing the lines and the whole process of creating, because remember we went from 7 wards to 8.
Yep.
In order to make the math work and draw the lines and such. And
wow, that is, so basically it barely got passed and implemented just in time for us to change it again.
Correct.
I love it. That's amazing.
And since every time the census occurs, doesn't automatically require redistricting. Only if your population gains or loses enough to exceed that sort of 10% rule somewhere. And this case, it did. So between 2000 and 2010, it didn't. But then when we got to the 2010 census, it did change enough and required a redistricting that took 4 or 5 years to complete. And I think we've only been through 2 or 3 election cycles with the new system.
That's so funny. That seems like, okay, I'm going to be quiet. We'll move on from that. Okay. So we're coming around the hour. Now we can stay on a little bit longer, but I want to make sure that we talk about everything that you think is important. So I'm going to let you take back over the show. So for now. Tell me what's next.
Well, what's most important is if this interests you, is to participate in tomorrow evening's meeting.
Yes, and as a reminder, all the links and all the information is going to be in the description and or a pinned comment, one or the other, depending on the platform, after the show is over. So links, link to the Zoom meeting, link to the different documents that we've looked at, they're all going to be available after the show.
Right. Okay. So that participating in tomorrow's evening's meeting gives you an opportunity to have input to what the Ad Hoc Committee is going to create for their report that they will present to the City Council.
Okay.
The second part of that engagement invitation is, so then the City Council in January, February will take the Ad Hoc Committee report and come up with their own redistricting proposal, which then goes through an entire public process sponsored by the City Council. So in the springtime, March, April, May, perhaps, this redistricting plan is going to be a very live topic
Yeah.
on city council agenda. So there's an opportunity to provide feedback and input directly to the city council before it becomes final.
Well, and along those lines, it's really important to make sure that you're participating in town meeting day this year. Who is your current city councilor? Do you trust them to make good decisions? Do you trust that they have the best interest of Burlington at heart? I found it very interesting that people will vote for candidates and say, "Oh, well, she's a really nice person. Well, she's really nice. Oh, he's a really good guy. And oh, he cares about people." And then they go and vote on things and create new rules and charter changes that invariably make Burlington more expensive, less safe, and really push out regular middle class Burlingtonians. And so you may like your city councilor as a human being, but if they cannot do math, okay, you need to get them replaced. If you are not the candidate, talk someone else into running for a candidate. There should not be a single city council seat that goes uncontested this year. Same with Burlington School Board, people. That is 75% of our property taxes, the school board is. They're getting ready for a $95 million budget and probably $200 million more they're going to ask for the school. Y'all better be paying attention. I don't care if you think your city councilor is a nice person. They're making this place worse. If they currently are on city council, they're likely making Burlington worse. I'm just saying. Not all of them are trash, but they're probably making it worse. More than likely. Okay. That's my words, not Jeff's. Nobody hold that against him. My words. Okay. So they need to participate. It's really important, especially once we start really talking about it next spring. When they start making some decisions. Anything else you want to make sure we hit on tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
So I will just reiterate that, like we just talked about, phase 2 of this public process is live at the city council spring of 2022, and hopefully on the ballot for approval November 2022. And I guess the other, interesting dynamic to the current ward structure is, Erica, I know that you're familiar that I serve in Ward 7 as an inspector of election.
Yes.
And I keep track of voter turnout data. And you and I can sort of have a detailed conversation later, but there are very specific consequences and implications of the current ward structure, where some wards have wonderful voter turnout data that they can be proud of.
Yes.
And
like
there
us in the New North End.
Yes. Just saying, eh? And then there are and there are several that are discouraging, to be polite. So I and a lot of that is exactly impacted by the way we are currently drawing the ward boundaries. And so hopefully some of that could be addressed by eliminating Ward 8 or going back to 7 and just redistributing some of the student population. So
yeah. Well, and as an inspector of elections, I don't know if you know the answer. This is a little off topic. Why? Let me back up. We know everybody. This is not a conspiracy theory. Anybody who works in elections, even our former ward clerks who were not conservatives, Democrats, progressives, said they believe our voter rolls are at least 25% inflated. And that was just in our ward, or that was just in the New North End. And we don't have as much turnover as, 1, 2, 3. So how do we clean up our voter rolls? How do we get those old names off the list?
Well, that job belongs to, that's a responsibility of the city clerk's office.
Oh.
And so some of the homework that I did for you today, I can sort of back in, currently our population, we talked about earlier in Burlington, is 44,740 some odd. We currently have 37,500 some odd registered voters, which still, that's 84% of our current population, which is a ridiculous number. But I have to say that since 2019, like 4,600 names have been removed from the checklist.
Okay.
So last year, the clerk's office did go through a cleanup process of mailing flyers or mailers out to people and asking them to, respond, because they have, they have to do that a number of
that's part of the
times.
Process. You have to like warn people and do a whole thing. Yeah.
Right. So it's a cumbersome process, but I concur with your concern that our voter registration rolls are hugely inflated.
Yeah.
Over what I think they should be.
Yes. And what's interesting, I was talking to someone about this. You may not think that that's a problem, right? Everybody wants to say, well, if they are mailing ballots to every registered voter, that invariably means that extra ballots are going to go to homes, and you're hoping that people are on the honor system and that they're not going to vote when they're not supposed to, right? So even if you don't want to have that conversation, you do have to talk about the fact that when petitioning the government, it's particularly in the city of Burlington, if you want to have change or you want to get something on a ballot or do something, you have to have a percentage of registered voters sign your petition or do the thing. And if our registered voters are 25% inflated, then we might not even be able to get the numbers required, because it's not even a real number that we're going by. So you may have to have actually a whole majority rather than a plurality or whatever it is. So you may not be concerned about voting integrity, but you should be concerned about your ability to petition your government. That's another little self-governance plug that I had for tonight. Yeah,
that's an interesting dynamic that I hadn't thought about.
Okay, so what else? Okay, so we're going to get ready. I feel like there was something else we talked about that we're missing, or that I wanted to go back to. But most important thing, everybody that I can remember off the top of my head right now is everybody, you can go to the meeting tomorrow, 6 to 8, right, Jeff?
That's correct.
At the Miller Building on
Lakeside Avenue, which is right behind the Cumberland Farms building there on Pine Street.
Okay.
So essentially you go to where the Public Works
across
building,
from DPW.
DPW.
Yep.
Take a right or a left, depending upon which
way you're going.
Head down towards the lake, the big parking lot, and the Miller building is on the left-hand side of the road before you hit the tunnel. So
cool. All right, cool. So again, everyone, all that information is going to be in the chat or the pinned comment. Let me see. Oh, and you guys check out the comments if you're watching. Looks like Christopher Aaron posted about a charter change meeting tomorrow and some other things. So check out that other stuff too. That's all really important. Self-governance is super important, you guys. That is the one thing that we're really asked to do, is to just pay attention and vote and make sure our officials are not doing wild stuff. So it's up to you. If you don't like how things are going, you, voter, viewer, actually have the ability to change it. Yes, exactly. Point. I'm not supposed to. I was told I'm not supposed to point at people, that it's rude. So I've been practicing the Bill Clinton thumb thing. This is a thing.
I'll give you another tip,
Yeah.
Erica.
Yeah.
I used to be an ice hockey referee.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And one of the techniques is that when you're sort of calling a penalty on somebody, for example, or when you're speaking to somebody, you point at them with an opened hand, not an accusatory, just like holding your hand open. Okay.
Like this?
Well, no, turn it the other way. Straight up.
Oh.
Anyway, you're pointing with no, that's the good cop thing. Stick your hand out like you're going to shake somebody's hand.
Like this?
Yes. That's it.
Oh, like this.
Yes. That is, as far as body language goes, that is a much more neutral, less accusatory gesture when you're calling a penalty on somebody.
Oh, Christopher said sword hands like a military officer. So that's a thing?
Yes. Yep. But anyway, so, cool. It's just to avoid the accusatory finger wag at you kind of thing.
Maybe people need to have their finger wagged at them, though. I know it doesn't really work, but, we can help. The show is called Generally Irritable, after all. So
we digress.
Okay. So we're going to put all that information in there. Jeff, thank you. And I just want to say, actually, a little pitch for Mr. Jeff Comstock before we get off of the show. Jeff and his wife, Nancy, were two of the first people that I really met and talked to when I moved back to Burlington. And when I started getting involved in politics, and I was like, what in the heck is happening here? And I have just been absolutely blessed to have gotten to meet the two of you. And I'm super grateful for not only all the ways that you've been a friend to me and helped me, but also how much you do for the community. If people don't know, Jeff and Nancy have, since deciding to retire, I hope it's okay that I say that, they've retired and they've really given their lives to giving over to the community. So they're involved in a bunch of things like the neighborhood planning assembly, in this redistricting. I know you were helping a farmer who had been injured. You were just going like taking care of his animals and stuff. And so I just want you to know that I am really grateful for you. And I have a ton of respect for you, Jeff. And if for some reason you ever decided to run for like House rep or something like that, if you ever wanted to, you would have my vote. And I would tell everyone on earth how awesome you are. So I just wanted to give Jeff some praise today before we go, because I think it's really important to show how we can make a difference. And you've really made a difference in the New North End and in Burlington. So thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you.
Thank you kindly.
You're very welcome. Okay, hold on with me a sec, Jeff. I am going to end the broadcast. All right.